Hey, I'm Katie. Thanks so much for watching. Now, I know I'm really late to the party, but I just recently saw the Hamilton tag and I had to do it because I love books and I love Hamilton. Like, you can't not. So, the first part of this tag is the song The Room Where It Happens, which is a book world you would put yourself into. For me, I'm going to go with The Lunar Chronicles by Marissa Meyer. And I mean, I admit I would love to go somewhere like Harry Potter or Throne of Glass, but honestly, the concept of some people having magic and not everyone having the same abilities just kind of sketches me out, and I don't know how well I would do in a world where like power and what you're capable of is really subjective and there's nothing you can do about it. The second question on this tag is the Schuyler sisters, or an underrated female character. So I'm gonna throw it back a little bit to Inkheart and go with Meggie. This series is by Cornelia Funke. I think that's how you pronounce it. And Meggie's just a really strong character who kind of doesn't let things stop her, even though she doesn't really have any experience with it, like the situations she's thrown into. But she doesn't sit back. Like, she still tries to learn and adjust to the things that she is around so that she can help, like when her father is in trouble, she figures out what's going on to try to help him. And I really admire her. And I think that just because she's a book lover, she's kind of not really considered as seriously as some of our other characters. And then also with underrated female characters, I'm going to bring in Doctor Who, even though that's not technically a book, because Amy Pond just deserves all of the recognition in the world. So, it gotta. The third question on this tag is the song My Shot, so a character that goes after what they want and doesn't let anything stop them. For this, I'm going to go with both June and Day, but especially June from the Legend series by Marie Lu. June is kind of, I don't know, one of my favorite protagonists, especially for like a dystopian trilogy, which there are quite a few of. But she just really, she doesn't stop. She's on this path to become something, and when she realizes that that's not right, she just immediately changes. And so often in book series, especially with YA fiction, like, we have these characters who have been on this set path and like they have this idea of where their life is going to go for a really long time, and then something happens and it takes them a while to kind of figure out what they're going to do now that their life plan is kind of in shambles. But June doesn't take a moment. Like, she sees that something's wrong and that what she thought isn't what is, and that like the people that she was gonna be working for are not good people, and she just like immediately just splits. And I don't know, I really respect that. I think that was a great character decision and a great plot move on Marie Lu's point. So the next question is the song Stay Alive. So, and this is a character you wish was still alive, which I'm sure we all could go on and on forever. I mean, Harry Potter alone, probably I could list at least 10 characters off the top of my head. But since Harry Potter is kind of the basic answer to every question, I'm going to try to not use it for all of them. So for this one, I'm going to, spoilers, lots of spoilers, I'm going to have to go with Artemis Fowl. Obviously the main character from Ian Colfer's Artemis Fowl series, and wow, the last book in the series just killed me. And we kind of had this weird thing where Artemis like came back to life, but it wasn't him. It's this clone that him and Foley kind of made, and still has Artemis's original mannerisms from the first book, but it's not the same. It's not Artemis. And like, I really just, it was so, the way that Artemis died was perfect, and it was great, and it kind of just showed all of the character development that had happened throughout this entire series. And like, we had watched him just kind of grow up a lot, and it was beautiful, and he sacrificed himself, and it was amazing, but it was still really hard. And then the idea of everyone else still having an Artemis around, but Artemis not being around and getting to be with them just really grinds my gears. It hurts. For this one, I couldn't just pick one. So I also want to go with basically everyone from We Were Liars, because wow, that was rough. And that's by E. Lockhart. And then also, I really wish that Bianca D'Angelo hadn't died from Rick Riordan's Percy Jackson series. And I know that she was a minor character and we didn't get to see much of her, and she was young and not really super duper important at that point in time. And like obviously the series went on without her for another 7.5 books, but just it really, I don't know, as the older sibling of 3 kids, like I have 3 younger siblings, to think about like them losing me in that kind of situation where they don't really having anyone else kills me. And like I can't imagine. And Nico especially, who was already like really lonely and like hard to understand and struggling so much, like I just really wish that he hadn't had to grow up without Bianca. Like it's just, I mean obviously Hades treating him like crap didn't help, but it's just something that like if there were any one character that I think I wish were still alive, not even just of her own volition, like she shouldn't have died when she was 12, that's not fair, but like also for Nico. Alright, so the next question is Burn, the most heartbreaking end to a relationship you've ever read. And this one was honestly the fastest of all of these for this tag. It was no question, and it was Heron Greystairs from the Infernal Devices trilogy by Cassandra Clare. Oh my god, I've reread Clockwork Princess at least 5 times probably. And then from time to time when I just feel like being sad, I just open it up and reread like the ending scenes. And I just will never, ever, ever, I will never get over it. I hate love triangles, but this is the one I will accept because it's so perfectly written and there's just such mutual love between all of the characters. And like, oh my god. And like, it shouldn't be this upsetting because the girl got to be with both of the guys, but somehow it just makes it worse, and it just hurts so bad to know that even though, oh, Wessa happened, like Brother Zachariah was there and he didn't get to live that life with them, and now Jess is happening, but Will is dead and gone long after, and I don't know, it's just really painful. I'm never gonna be over it. And Lady Midnight is not looking like it's gonna be any better, so I'm just really worried, guys. The next question on this tag is You'll Be Back, and that's the sassiest villain. Of course, there are lots of options for this because sass is like a really recurring trend the last few years, especially in YA fiction, which is basically all of what I read. But I don't know, so this was really hard. I was trying to come up with some different fandoms because I didn't want to keep going back to the same few. So I went with the villain from the Die For Me series by Amy Plum. So the antagonist in the Die For Me series, her name was Violet, and she was super fun and outgoing and really just friendly to everyone until she started trying to kill them. And at that point, she became so sassy and just the greatest villains are the ones who get to know the characters first. That's why Sebastian in the Mortal Instruments series, like we hate him, but he knows how to grind their gears because, he hung out with them first. That's always the best way to get to people. I mean, if any of you guys watched the Scream TV show on MTV, Kieran was so good at messing with everyone in season 2 because he knew them. He hung out with them. He knew everything that would kill them. Okay, so the next tag is The Reynolds Pamphlet, which is a book with a twist you didn't see coming. Oh my god. I think if we're not gonna say Everything Ever by Sarah J. Maas, because wow, I want to go with 2. Let's go with Black Ice by Becca Fitzpatrick and Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard. So Black Ice was this crazy book, and I admit I didn't really like the Hush Hush series a whole lot. So when I read Black Ice, I was kind of hesitant, but it seemed really cool. And it's these girls. The main character goes camping with her best friend um, for spring break, and they go to this house in the mountains, and then it snows, and while they're driving, and they get locked into this random cabin, and basically the way the story ends up working out is there's a murderer out here somewhere, and we don't know who it is, and just the ending when you find out everything, and oh my goodness, like, wow. Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard, of course, has Mare Barrow, a red in a sea of silvers, wherein the color of your blood is what's used to decide what class of society you are. And Mare is red, and the distinguishing factor, other than the color of their blood, is that silvers have these powers, gifts, kinds of things, stereotypical. So one day, while Mare is working as a servant at the palace, she figures out that she has a power, but her blood is red, so it's kind of impossible and crazy, and she starts working with this secret society, Katniss Everdeen style, but a lot more actively, kind of trying to like undermine the government, and the way the book ends is just crazy. I did not see it coming, which, I mean, I don't know. Personally, I just eat up whatever book is put in front of me, so whenever betrayal happens, I never see it coming, but, makes reading entertaining. The next tag is nonstop, so that's a series you marathoned. For this, I probably want to go with the Beautiful Creature series by Margaret Stohl and Kami Garcia, and probably also the IQ series by Roland Smith. Beautiful Creatures, I just picked up one after the other. They were really captivating, and I think largely because the big plot action didn't really take place. Like, in the first book, you have all this buildup, and it's her birthday's coming, and on her birthday, this huge thing's gonna happen, but then it doesn't, and they managed to, postpone it, and it's not gonna be an issue until the next book. And so you kind of are like, well, I just read a few hundred pages. I want to know. So, you kind of have to keep going. And then with with Roland Smith, he's just, I love Roland Smith's books. If anyone's ever read Cryptid Hunters, it's amazing. But with the IQ series, it's not really as popular as I think it deserves to be, but it's set with this kid who goes by Q, and his mom just married this guy, Roger. And he has this new stepsister, Angela, and just as they're kind of getting to know each other, and they're going on tour because their parents are musicians, so right after their wedding, they're on tour, they find out that Angela's mother, who they thought only worked for the Secret Service, was also a spy, and she had a twin sister, and all this crazy stuff. So kind of while they're on tour with their parents, they're also working as spies, and it's, obviously not super duper realistic, but it's such a fun and well written series, and they're not super long each, and they're just really enjoyable, and they're at that great point where they're not super duper awfully too old for middle school range, but they are up there. They're not boring, oh, if you didn't read them when you were younger, you can't enjoy them now. I would say they're definitely a great series to read. And once I start them, I can never put them down until I've read through them all. The next question on this tag is Satisfied, your favorite book with multiple points of view. This one, I have to go with the Throne of Glass series because, it's just so good. And I don't know if it technically counts as points of view since they're all kind of in third person, but, it's from, different people's heads, so we're gonna count it. Sarah J. Maas is the most amazing writer. Throne of Glass series is the best thing I've read since Harry Potter, which is saying a lot. I have a Harry Potter tattoo on my back. I can't ever put her books down, and she's phenomenal, and all of her characters have really distinct personalities. There are no straw men. There's no one that's just there because we need a character there. We need other people to exist in this world. They all have histories and families, and it's just so elaborate and wonderfully crafted. with this, I also want to go with legend, because I think that since that is from a first person perspective, it's one of my favorite of all time first person tellings that goes between two different genders and manages to make them sound authentic. Like a lot of times with Allegiant and things like that, you'll go back and forth, and I can't tell. Like I'll have to look to see whose point of view I'm reading, because they just sound so similar. You can't tell the difference, especially when it comes to characters of different genders, because so often when they're of the same gender, like the author will have them have very different characteristics, so it's easier. Whereas when they're different, they don't really differentiate as much prior to writing from their point of view. So Legend was just a really great, like you could definitely tell there were two different people speaking. There were two different personalities taking over that book, and you could feel them in each page that you read. The next part of this tag is Who Lives, Who Dies, Who Tells Your Story? And that's a book or series that you feel will be remembered throughout history. And of course, there's no other answer for this question but Harry Potter. I mean, it's a whole other world. There are spin-offs from this series. There are fan fictions come to life in things. The textbooks written about in the series are real books. I don't think anything else can compare. And I know that a lot of people that are like my parents and grandparents' ages kind of are like doubtful, because they see it as just another, teen series that's really popular right now and it'll kind of fade away. But I think that Harry Potter is something especially different, and it's become so ingrained in pop culture, and especially like in our generation, that I don't think it's going to go away anytime in the near or far future. The next one is going to be Helpless, and that's a relationship you were pulling for from the very start. For this, I also have two. I'm really bad at deciding. I'm going to go with Kate and Giacomo from The Juliet Club by Suzanne Harper, which has been one of my favorite books since probably the 6th grade. It's such a nice, fun, light read, and I mean, I love heavy emotional books, but sometimes it's just so nice to have Jennifer E. Smith type books where you know there's going to be a happy ending, and there's a romance, and there's a little bit of a struggle, and there's angst, but it's all just normal, like, teenage stuff that comes together really well. And I just really, really love that book, and I was so excited when they finally did get together. For this also, I have to put Gemma from Lady Midnight, because I have never been so captivated by the first book in a series, or by a couple in the first book in a series especially. And the way Cassie wrote them was phenomenal. I mean, Julian and Emma have this relationship that's crazy, and they're just they are each other's worlds, and they kind of gravitate around each other, and it's not a question, and they're just so weaved throughout the fabric of each other's lives that it's like nothing else. And can't wait to figure out how we're going to destroy this problem of the parabatai. So that's going to be interesting. The next one is 10 Dueled Commandments, which is going to be your favorite fight scene from a book. So for this one, I want to go with the entirety of The Last Olympian, because that counts as a fight scene. The Last Olympian is such a great conclusion to a series. I mean, there are a lot of series endings that are kind of disappointing, or they're too easy and no one dies, and that's not realistic, or everyone dies and you're just kind of in shock afterwards and you can't really appreciate it as much. Like Mockingjay was really great, but everybody died and it was just kind of upsetting. But The Last Olympian was so perfect. All of the fight scenes were brilliantly written. My favorite, if I have to pick one, would probably, of course, be when Annabeth took the knife for Percy. But just the whole thing was just so wonderful, and it was so real and just honest, and I really love The Last Olympian. Okay. The next one is going to be Say No to This, or Your Guilty Pleasure Read. and I have to bring it back to Twilight, which I know is so problematic, and like the older I get and the more I think about it, the more I can't believe that like I love this series so much, but I can't not. I'm never gonna stop. When I see the marathons on FX, I'm gonna watch them, and I'm gonna acknowledge that Edward and Jacob are both very problematic, and that Bella is very problematic, and the whole thing just has a lot of issues, but I also am gonna just read them because I'm just really attached to the series, and I think that even though there are issues, it's a very well written in terms of like an enticing read series. So that will definitely probably be my guilty pleasure read for a very long time. Next is What Did I Miss? And that's a book or series you were late to reading. And I still haven't read The Raven Boys or Darkest Minds or anything by Pierce Brown, so those have to go on that list, and I'm really ashamed of that. But as for something that I have read that I was late to reading, I'm going to go with Vladimir Todd, which has been out for years. I remember my friend telling me about it in probably 5th grade, middle school, and I just read it during my senior year of high school last year. So I don't even know. I was very late, but it was really good, and even though it was kind of set for a younger age group, I really, really enjoyed it, and I'm so glad that I did finally read it. Vladimir Todd was really classic and a really nice, different kind of story about vampires, since kind of all of the newer series have been like vampires and witches or werewolves or whatever, and it was cool to have something that was just like focused on the vampires and like a kid who's kind of dealing with that instead of the older generation issues, which I mean I love too, but it was really nice. And last but not least, the final question on this tag is Wait for It, a book that was worth waiting for. For this one, I also have two because indecisive. The first one being House of Hades, which after the end of Mark of Athena, the biggest literal cliffhanger of probably my entire life, House of Hades was so hard. It's the most difficult year of any book waiting thus far, although Lady Midnight could give it a run for its money, I think. But it was the most frustrating thing. But when I actually did finally get the book and was able to read it, I was so satisfied, and it was worth every minute of the wait because it was really well done. There was so much character growth, and I mean, after being with Percy from the age of 12, you could definitely see how he grew up, which was amazing, and him and Annabeth's dynamic had changed, but like they had grown together, and it was phenomenal. And we got so much more of all these other characters like Jason and Nico and Leo and Hazel, who like we love, and like we're like, oh, we're fond of them but they're like newer and we don't totally know as much about them. Even Nico, who we've had for ages, and we got to really, really spend more time with them because they weren't with Percy and Annabeth, so they kind of were having to figure things out on their own, which I think made them realize how much they were capable of and made us as readers realize how great they really were. And House of Hades was just good. And then the second one for this, and my final book for this tag, which is way longer than it should be, I'm sorry. I'm going to go with Undivided from the Unwind series by Neal Shusterman. And it felt like it took forever for this finale to come out, and just getting through this series after reading Unwind so many years ago, and I just finally got Undivided in my hands probably a year or two ago, after I don't even know how long, but it was so long and so frustrating, and I just wanted Connor and Risa and Lev and everyone to be happy and like get to live, and Unwinding to be abolished because that was clearly an issue, and just so much frustration. And then Undivided came out, and it was so perfect and a kind of rarely happy ending, especially for a dystopian kind of series like that, especially one with a lot of warfare and a lot of blood on everyone's hands prior to the finale. But I don't know, Neal Shusterman did a really great job of wrapping it up and having a really conclusive thing that kind of like hit home, but also just felt very true to what the series had built up up until that point. Thanks so much for watching, and I'm sorry again, I know that this is probably around a year after everyone else's. See ya.